Hello and welcome to this yet another brand new episode on US elections. And today we are joined by Kirti Upadhyaya. She's the founder of IndUS Tech Council, comes from Washington, D.C., and has spent a lot of time understanding the whole political scenario as it unfolds as of now, and also earlier as well. Kirti, thank you so much for taking time out for One India.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thanks for having me here.
But Kitty, first things first, we know any discussion wouldn't be complete if we don't mention the post-Trump attack scenario. How do you see it unfolding? Is it going to benefit Donald Trump? Is it going to benefit the Republicans? Or the Democrats have some way to negotiate this whole incident that has happened?
Well, firstly, it's really a heart-wrenching episode, right? Anytime that an attack like this, violence like this takes place, even before we want to analyze it, I just want to say that it's shocking. It's the first time in I think 40 years that there's been an assassination attempt on presidents. As you know, there have been assassinations. At least 4 presidents have been assassinated. There've been at least 3 assassination attempts, and but still, anytime that this happens, it's shocking, it's heart-wrenching. And I also want to address some of the issues that this once again brings to light. I think it's a time to also reflect. I think a lot of us in America are taking this as a moment. This, doesn't matter which side of the aisle we are, doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I think it's a moment to sort of just think about some of the issues that are very pressing within America. Most importantly, the polarization. I think is a lesson not just for America but for the world over, where we see so much polarization happening. That what form polarization can really take. Look at America specifically. After during the Civil War, polarization was at its peak, but since then it's been coming down. But now again, we see it rising so much. Secondly, again, you can be a great proponent of Second Amendment, which most folks are, but still it does raise the issue of gun control, and of course another issue being mental health crisis, which has been plaguing most developing countries and also America. So before we sort of get into any analysis of this, I thought it might be pertinent just to mention the human side and the fact that it raises a lot of questions, not just for folks in America, but world over in developing countries, what forms of polarization really can take. In terms of how it's going to really affect the polls and so on. I mean, I follow 538 and some other polls, and I don't think they've yet factored into, because much of these analysis happens up till like Friday to Sunday, and the assassination attempt just happened over the weekend. But even if we just look at the past few months or weeks, it's been a very tough, close fight, right? You look at any of the polls that are happening right now, the difference is merely 2 to 3 points between President Trump and President Biden. Even after the bad night that President Biden had at the debate, even then that distance really didn't increase much. It has been a pretty pretty tight context, but folks in India will also know this, that anytime something like this happens, there is that sympathy factor, and that sympathy factor I think would remain. And what it'll also do is that not only for these elections, but if President Trump was to come on as president, it would also give him some amount of immense political capital to maybe go through with a lot of initiatives. So I think this is something, as terrible as it sounds to say this, there is a sympathy factor and there is some political capital that you do gain from something like this.
Right. Absolutely. The Republican convention is on this week. It's all about the Republicans, and J.D. Vance announced as the running mate for President Trump, former President Trump. Do you think that it's the right mix for the Republicans, and J.D. Vance could actually be the unique selling point for the Republicans?
Well, I don't follow Republican politics or Democratic politics that much. I am more of an expert on US-India and defense relationship, but just as
Okay.
an observer, as somebody who is sort of surrounded by politics in DC and so on, just based on what I've heard, it feels like, JD Vance has a pretty impressive history. He's, I was just reading, there's even a movie made about him. He's somebody who comes from, hillbilly America, rises up, goes to Yale. And he's a
Mhm.
true conservative. And when we look at it, Trump, despite being a Republican, he has had those issues with, the the real conservatives, the real Republican conservatives. So I think in that ways, it's a good mix.
Mhm.
And it's also interesting that JD Vance started as sort of a never Trumper, and now he's sort of the lead
I
candidate for Trump. So I think that's something that's very interesting. That's an interesting story. And just as we look at the Republican Party itself, I think it's evolving and being shaped by Trump. And within that mix, having somebody who sort of represents that true conservative Republican is always a good thing to have. And I guess for
Mhm.
Indians here and for Indian viewers, it'll also be interesting to know that JD Vance has a Indian origin, Indian
Indian wife,
American
Kriti Upadhyaya.
wife.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's something that started making headlines this side, and now Jerivan saying how his wife and her belief and thoughts in Hinduism also helped him a lot, to learn lots of things there. Well, needless to say, Kirti, when we talk about Indo US relations and your company, IndUS Tech Council also works in the same regard. Help us understand what IndUS Tech is all about, first of all. And secondly, um, whom do you see more beneficial for India, Donald Trump or Joe Biden?
Well, thanks for asking about IndUS Tech Council. So we're super new. We're a DC-based think tank working to accelerate US-India defense tech ties. So we're focused primarily on US-India
Okay.
defense tech relations, dual-use relations. We work a lot on shaping policy, on working with policymakers to provide them,
Mhm.
any sort of research or background that helps accelerate that relationship just by creating a more enabling environment. That's what governments can really do, is create a more enabling environment. We're very, very in tune with and involved in the IndusX initiative. By the
Mhm.
way, IndusTech came before they started IndusX, but last year when Prime
Well,
Minister
I thought
Modi.
for a moment it's about Indus Valley. It takes us back to
No,
the
no,
very
it's
roots of India.
India, US, yeah. So last year when Prime Minister Modi was visiting for the state visit, they
Right.
also announced IndusX
Yes.
ecosystem, which we are very proud to be a part of. And then on the more company side, we work with US and Indian companies
Mhm.
with go-to-market strategies, helping make those, matchmaking, arranged marriage connections, and yeah, just working to really
Right.
empower the ecosystem in whatever small way we can. I'm really
Mhm.
glad you asked me this question because I get asked this question so many times now. Like I think since I've started my career, whatever
Mm.
elections I've seen, this question always comes up on either
Yeah.
side, right? Whether India goes
Mhm.
into elections or US goes into elections. I
True.
think something
True.
that we've seen in the past 10 years is that it really doesn't matter for US-India relations because there is such
Mhm.
bipartisan support for the relationship today that it really doesn't matter who is there, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, because
Mhm.
as much as there is polarization, there's one thing that has bipartisan support amongst other things, and that is the championship for US-India relationship. The
Mhm.
fact that American lawmakers, American bureaucrats do believe that a rising India is truly in America's interest. And
Mhm.
the fact that good US-India relationship is something that has immense value. If
Right.
we look at, some things that even folks wouldn't have thought would have continued, the sort of clarity that President Trump provided on the fact that China is a true challenge, that has been continued completely by President Biden. There hasn't been a step backward, right? If anything, in some of his proposals that are coming for his next term, he's being even more aggressive. If that doesn't tell you that there's
Right.
bipartisan support for India, I don't know what does. The fact that there is this
Absolutely.
centrality,
Mhm.
despite everything that's happening, NATO summit, whatnot, whatever
Mhm.
is going on with NATO and the few wars. I mean, Indo-Pacific has still stayed very, very central to U.S. foreign policy. And just look at the amount of engagements that are happening. I mean, it's hard to keep up. It truly is hard to keep up. At any point, you have US, right now we have RIMPAC going on, you have US India military
Mhm.
exercises happening, you have visits, phone calls, strategic
Right.
initiatives happening. So I think there's bipartisan support for US and India. So it really doesn't matter whether it's a Republican or a Democratic government.
I totally understand here, and especially in the post 9/11 world, I believe the role of India has also increased manifold as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned. The Southeast Asian parts also making India the focal point there. And then there is China also. We'll come to that later. Katie, from the elections point of view in United States, both Republicans, say for that matter, Barack Obama, a Democrat, Barack Obama, and Republican, Donald Trump, all of them have always tried to make America great. I mean, Barack Obama came with the idea of yes, we can, and we saw how he emphasized and focused on America first. Donald Trump also came into power and he said that let's make America great again. All these aspects for any president of any country for that matter is to give priority to their nationals, to their citizens first. Now, US, as we know, is home to a lot of expats also, a lot of immigrant community also living there from Spain, Mexico, India, and you name it, and they have it there. What are the expectations of the expat community there? If we may start with the Indian community, and what role do they play in order to have the equidistant approach, both with Republicans and Democrats?
So I think for the election point of view, Indian Americans are more important than just immigrants, since Indian Americans are the one who'll actually be voting.
Voting.
Um,
Yes.
and let me tell you, Indian Americans are are becoming more and more relevant. Today,
Mhm.
if you look at Indian Americans, more than any other demographic group, they have the highest median income. They're the
Mhm.
most educated, something with our parents making us do all those degrees. I mean, even I have two master's degrees, right? They are the most wealthy when it comes to net wealth. They're the most wealthy. And also the fact that a lot of, in the US, a lot of political funding is done through political action committees, through PACs. And a lot of
Mhm.
these PACs are controlled by businesses today, more and more by tech businesses and so on within Silicon Valley, where again, you find this proliferation of Indian American CEOs, Indian American businesses. So
Mhm.
there is a very critical role that Indian Americans play in terms of just not as much as by their sheer strength in numbers, because that isn't as much, but
Right.
by the disproportionate, value they bring just in terms of being these members of society that are wealthy, educated, and can really shape opinion or, provide funding. Um,
Mhm.
but even though in India, there might be certain leanings towards certain political party, you'll be,
Mhm.
at least the viewers will be interested to know that a lot of this funding has actually been Indian American funding has actually been historically towards the Democrats. So
Right.
yeah, Indian Americans actually
Mhm.
lean more towards Democrats, or at least fund more towards Democrats. So when it
Mhm.
comes to Indian Americans, I think they are becoming increasingly a very, very important voice within America. That's why you see now more than ever, especially in certain strategic places where you find this, the not only the power but also the strength of Indian Americans is a lot. Places like
Mhm.
say New Jersey or California or so on. Indian Americans are increasingly playing more and more critical role. And we've really come a long way since Ami Bera was the first, first Indian American congressman to be in the Congress. Today, you see more and more congressmen, senators, and so on. You see the India caucus, which is ever growing
Most
in
welcomes.
Yes, of course, which is growing in its own influence. So the Indian Americans, just like any other ethnicity, play a very critical role in India. I think for Indians themselves, the immigrant and expat community, they're also very, very critical to the US economy, because today we see that there is a dearth of STEM labor within the United States. And it's come to a point where, there were some, when you go back to some of the national defense strategies and so on, there were certain proposals that, hey, even if there's like Chinese students doing PhDs, we want them here because let them stay back, let them contribute to the US economy rather than going to China. And many of these US students, I mean, I came to the US as a student. Many of these students, they go on to be engineers, they go on to be doctors, they stay and contribute and become valuable members of American society. And I think more and more now lawmakers and people who are going to the elections are also thinking, how do we really capitalize on them? That's why you hear proposals like those coming from President Trump that, we're going to give green cards to graduates and so on. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts on that.
Perfect. Perfect, Kirti. I mean, good to know at least that America is also, facing this issue of reverse brain drain. Those who come there, study there, they should not leave. That's the effort, at least. One final question, Kirti, since you are an expert when it comes to defense tech and also the defense strategies to a certain extent, and hence comes the tech part there. There are two big wars going on in the world as we speak. One is obviously Russia and Ukraine, and the other one is Israel and Hamas and Iran thrown in together. From the American point of view, do you believe that the subsequent government would have to focus more on these defense strategies, whether to get into a war or not? Because I remember Barack Obama towards the end started saying that we will pull out our armed forces from Afghanistan. Donald Trump came riding on that, and towards the end of his tenure, he was able to remove the boots from the ground in Afghanistan. And the way it ended was not win-win situation for anyone, be it Afghanistan, be it the United States. In your opinion, for the new government in the United States, how important it is to have a critical look or at least a different view of the two wars that are going on and where America is an active partner as of now?
No, absolutely. I mean, Israel is a key ally and for the United States, and Russia is also one of the key adversaries, and the region within Europe is very, very strategic. And I think kudos to the US government for standing up for its friends and allies in the way that they are. But still, there is a lot of, backlash or pushback within America itself today that you can't really be spread too thin. I mean, think about it. What happens if tomorrow something, there's another front opening in, I mean, I hope that doesn't happen, but what if there's another front that opens in China and Taiwan? And if anything that we've learned in the past few years is that wars are getting very, they're no longer short, quick wars. Wars are getting long. I mean, this is something that we experience ourselves. We have these clashes with sticks and stones that goes on for years within our own borders. And it's also not very good for the economy in terms of, everything that's happening, and with inflation rising everywhere, the first thing that people think, it's just natural for them to think that, why are we spread all over? But I think that apart, public opinion apart, it's, US is the leader of the free world. And there are some responsibilities that come with it. And sure, sometimes the US, like in Afghanistan, has realized that there's some regions, no matter what you do, you really can't impact the outcomes. But everywhere else, especially for its key allies and partners, I think the US will do whatever it can to really be there for them. So here's hoping that the wars come to an end really soon and it's a positive outcome for everybody. But I think beyond all the noise and everything, strategically and for America itself and for the world globally, it is important that America is there to stand up for its friends and allies when there is a need to do so.
On that positive note, Kriti Upadhyaya there, founder of IndUS Tech Council, joining us all the way from Washington, D.C. Kriti, thank you so much for taking time out for One India. Really appreciate your inputs here.
Thank you, Pankaj.
Don't miss out. Follow One India for real-time updates.